Welcome to the Global News Podcast from the BBC. Hello, I'm Oliver Conway. And we're joined by our chief football news reporter, Simon Stone, to talk about that controversial FIFA plan to sell stakes in the World Cup to private investors. And Simon, there's been a big backlash to this, quite a lot of criticism, not least because of the involvement of the wider Trump family. Before we get into all that, though, tell us about the plan itself.
Basically, the plan is to create a subsidiary organisation to FIFA, responsible for developing the commercial aspect of FIFA. So Gianni Infantino has made it quite clear that over the 10 years that he's been FIFA president, the commercial value of the organisation has increased hugely, partly or mainly, I suppose, to do with TV rights for the main competitions. And obviously, FIFA have expanded a Club World Cup, so that's part of it. They've expanded the Women's World Cup, so that is also part of it. But mainly, this is because of revenue that's generated by the World Cup. And the World Cup has, in this cycle, gone up to 48 teams playing in the finals, which has driven commercial revenue. So basically, Gianni Infantino feels as though there's more value to be made around FIFA's rights, and therefore feels, along with many other sporting organisations, that the best way of tapping into that finance is to sell part of itself to private investors. And this is where we've got the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law. His investment vehicle is listed as one of the main kind of protagonists who can buy into FIFA and basically help shape FIFA's commercial entity for the next few years.
Yeah, and tell us in more detail about how this could affect the game in Europe and the game in the rest of the world.
I mean, the whole idea feels quite complicated, but the issue around that is once you allow private equity into any organisation, then the idea is to maximise income. The way of maximising income, if we're going to be broadly kind of speaking about FIFA, is to have a bigger World Cup more often, the Club World Cup bigger more often, men's and women's. But clearly, we already have a situation at the moment where the players, the leagues, the associations are screaming about the lack of space in the calendar for the traditional competitions that everyone values in every country, I suppose. Well, if you suddenly have a bigger World Cup more often, well, where is the space going to be for that to be played? And almost what has got to give to allow it to happen? Because, for instance, in England, the Premier League are not going to say, yeah, FIFA, you can have your competition that will develop, will generate money globally. And what we'll do in return is reduce our competition so our clubs get less, so we have less money to distribute to the English game. That's not going to happen. The League Cup, for instance, that competition generates most of the Football League's revenue, and that's an institution that's been going for nearly 150 years. So that's not going to give either. So I think the main issue is, where does the space come from to hold these tournaments that people generally feel will be an inevitable consequence of what FIFA is announcing?
Now, the latest report suggests that Gianni Infantino has given countries around the world a deadline of less than 2 months to sign up for this or miss out on some of the money. Are nations likely to turn down the prospect of extra cash?
Well, we're playing a numbers game here. So there are 211 member associations in FIFA, and this is a straight majority to pass this. And you're right, the deadline is the 19th of September, so that's just under 2 months to decide whether to accept what is essentially a payment of $20 million that will be paid by the 1st of January, and then a further $20 million that will be paid after that. Now, for many associations, or some associations in FIFA, $20 million is really not that much. So the FA in England, Spain, Italy, Germany, USA, maybe, most countries, $20 million is not that much. But for a lot of countries, it dwarfs the amount of money that they make from football, basically. If you're in Papua New Guinea, you're not selling media rights, global media rights for £1 billion in the way that the Premier League does. So the numbers game falls to whether there are enough countries and enough confederations who think actually it's a good idea to spread the money that's in the game more globally, so everybody gets a share and everybody benefits. There's a secondary element to it, which is how do FIFA know how this money is going to be spent? Because they say it's for the development of the game, but who is going to be across how this money is going to be spent? But if there are enough countries who decide that's in their interests, and in fairness, there's already the Czech Republic are already coming out and saying they think it's a good idea. The Czech Republic are clearly from UEFA. UEFA are having a meeting tomorrow to discuss their reaction, but they've already said it's a step too far. That is the organisation that's got globally the leagues that generate the most television revenue. So if one of those countries is already speaking in favour, you can imagine that there may be a number of smaller countries or countries with less developed football infrastructure in different parts of the world who will definitely think it's a good idea. And then, as I say, it becomes a numbers game.
Conversely, the Confederation, CONCACAF, and also the one in Asia have expressed reservations about this. Is that more about the process than the idea itself?
Well, I think that's a good word that you use there, and it's a word that's coming up quite a lot, process. It's interesting, really, because we've seen during the World Cup the relationship between Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, and also the United States President Donald Trump. And I referred before to the brother of Donald Trump's son-in-law being part of this kind of grand plan. But we're used to as well that people who cover politics in the United States saying that Donald Trump is a president who acts in a way that presidents just don't act, and therefore convention no longer applies. Well, in this instance, you could argue that Gianni Infantino has done exactly the same thing, because there is a process. The process is that someone comes forward with an idea. This then gets communicated to the confederations and the FIFA Council, and then those confederations go away to discuss it with their national associations who are part of the confederation. Then they come back and decide en masse whether or not it's a good idea or not. And it feels as though in this instance, Gianni Infantino has ridden roughshod over all that convention, because numerous people that I've spoken to have said the first they knew about it was when the press release landed, or the reports started to emerge, an hour or two before that. So broader terms, I don't know whether what CONCACAF are saying, and bearing in mind they've got some big associations, the United States, Canada, Mexico, have just held the World Cup, but they've also got a lot of smaller countries who would certainly fit into the category of being a country that doesn't really generate huge amounts from its domestic football. We've got CONMEBOL, who have the 10 South American nations, UEFA, Asia with a huge number of members, big and small. It's whether they are really annoyed over the fact that they've not been consulted and it's a slight against them, or it's whether they're really annoyed about the proposal itself and they're going to try and do something about it. Because ultimately, it's difficult to know what you can do about it without basically threatening to boycott FIFA's competitions.
Our chief football news reporter, Simon Stone, thank you. If you'd like to hear more from the Global News podcast, click the link below. But thanks for watching.